It always surprises me how fast November comes and goes. With the action at the end of October, I was eager to see what the rut would bring. The next day, after my last sit in October, these two small bucks told me everything I needed to know about where the bucks were at in the cycle. The bigger bucks are also cruising around at night, and I know it's just a matter of being out in the woods when they go daylight. I decided to try a sit in a new set I hung this summer, targeting a major trail intersection in Spencerport.
Hello everybody. It is a balmy 70-something degrees, and it's November 4th. Pretty much, rut action's starting to really kind of kick up a bit, even like more so like in the mornings. Like at night, it's getting colder than the cools that they're like the lows that they're saying. It's getting colder than that. In the mornings, it's pretty good. Had heck of an encounter last week. Actually, a week ago. Had a few bucks kind of coming in, and had one decent one kind of show up last night in the dark. I put out a little bit of semester's toe set with a mock scrape that I made, and another scrape that the deer had made. So we'll see how that goes tonight. I'm in a set that I hung this summer that I've been wanting to put in a stand here. And it's watching paths that I've seen deer come across in years before. So I'm hoping a big boy decides to come cruising by tonight. Or a few of them. I got my horns. I do plan to rattle a bit. Just to see if I can get something going, spark some interest. So, buckle up. Hopefully it'll be a fun night tonight, even though it's so warm. So, November, baby. Well, just got a text from Cory. Took a shot at a doe. He hit her. Not quite sure where. Wasn't a clean pass through. Arrow was still sticking out. Well, it was sticking out by half the arrow was sticking out. I mean, it's not penetration to get in there. It just depends on where he hit it. Let's see if he wants me to come out. Let's just hope that it's over half the arrow inside her and it's through the shoulder blade. Because the arrows I gave to Cory to shoot were my old FMJs. I can get pass-throughs with those. So if it hit bone, should be able to punch through it. He's shooting about 10 pounds less than me. Kind of the kicker.
got out of work early that day at about 3, and this is before daylight savings time, so I had about 2.5 hours left of daylight left. Actually 3 hours. And I went and I sat in my usual spot, but in this usual spot that I always sit, which was really just a blue lawn chair set up behind an old barn. I actually put up some camo netting in front of that so I would be a little bit more concealed, and this really paid off. So right at about dusk, I started noticing that the surrounding area was getting really quiet. The birds stopped, the squirrels stopped, their usual chatter. So that's, in my mind, when I start to really pay attention, is when you have those changes. And I stood up and knocked an arrow, and sure enough, this doe was walking in. And it was coming from, so my right to left. And I got to full draw, and I waited for it to get to a certain point where I could make a good shot. And it was a little far for me. At the time, I thought that it was about 25 yards, which is, I'm pretty good at that range. At least that's what I thought. And as soon as that deer stepped out, it was quartering 2, so I had a good shot at its left front shoulder. And I drew, well, I was drawn. I brought up the bow and aimed right behind that front shoulder, and it was kind of a small target to hit at that angle. And I just instinctually focused on the front point, like the actual sight, the front sight of that, and I put it at my yellow pin, which is about 30 yards. And I aimed and I fired, and the deer kind of hunkered down when it was shot, so I was really worried that I had missed. But when it turned around, I could see the arrow sticking out of it about a quarter of the length, so really just the fletching. And when it ran, I heard like a really loud break, and so I was a little concerned that the arrow had broken. I waited about 20 minutes after that, and then it's really starting to get dark. And I go through my bag, start looking for a flashlight. I realize I don't have a flashlight in my bag. So I went back to my truck and got a flashlight. I called Ian. I called my mom, who lived relatively local to that. I was like, is there any way you guys can bring me a flashlight or something? And they didn't, but I called my cousin, and he came out with another flashlight. And I went down. I found the broken arrow on the trail that I went back, and there wasn't a lot of blood. So I was really concerned that I made a bad shot or something. And I started looking through all the dogwood, which is super thick. It's getting really dark, not seeing a ton of blood. And I thought the deer would have gone through the dogwood, and it didn't. So I got a little concerned. I thought I was going to lose that deer, and with it being so warm, there was like this immense pressure of finding that deer as quickly as I could. And I actually, my instinct was that it did not go down the trail and that it went off into the thick stuff. And I searched a lot in the thick stuff and found no blood. So I went back to where I shot the deer in the last spot that I found blood, and I was like, you know what? It probably just went down the trail. Sure enough, 20 yards away from where that last blood trail was, I see this doe, and it's this old big doe that I knew. I had a feeling that was the doe that had been busting me years prior. And I found it, and the arrow actually came through right behind the front shoulder, a little bit high, and it was diagonal through the deer, so that the broadhead was actually in the back knee on the opposite side. So that arrow had gone super far into that deer. And I think that's one of the reasons, because by the time I shot it and found it, it had only been about an hour. So that deer expired very quickly. And I was using a fixed broadhead, so it did really well. It punched through both sides of the rib cage, nicked the bottom of the vertebrae, probably cut that artery that runs laterally along the deer. And it was it definitely scraped the top of the stomach. So I'd gut shot it a little bit, but it wasn't anything that I couldn't handle with a pressure washer. So my cousin hilariously got on his lawnmower, because this doe was big. I mean, probably 120, 150 pounds. Definitely tough to pull out, but he gets on his lawnmower that still has a plow on it from the winter before, and he's plowing over this dogwood to get there with the rope, and then we towed it out of there with a lawnmower, which is the most redneck thing I think I have ever witnessed my cousin or myself do. And yeah, that was it. It was a great thing to happen, because I had a big lack of confidence. I mean, ask Ian. I had a big lack of confidence with archery hunting, and I hadn't been able to practice that much that year because I was working so much. But it was great to see all those things transpire to make that moment happen. And one of the things that really stood out to me in my mind was when Ian was coaching me with archery, he would just say, settle down, and focus, and follow through with their shot really well. And those are the things that really worked well. Let my arrow loose and bring it down after the shot had clearly gone into the deer. And I think that really helped with my accuracy and getting that deer quickly. It's been a fantastic tasting deer. I didn't really lose much meat at all. Even with the gut shot, I washed it out really well. So yeah, I'm just super thankful that finally happened, and I shot that deer from the ground too, which is something that I really wanted to do before I started stand hunting more with a bow, is get something from the ground. And it was just a great time, and I'm super thankful and happy that it went well. Finally, it's been a hard time going.
I was able to make it out to see Cory's deer as they were dragging it out. I'm ecstatic for Cory. We've had so many close calls bow hunting together, and he now has his first archery kill. Cory is a devoted sportsman who loves conservation and holds making the best shots a top priority, and he is a fantastic student. He will always be someone I will always hunt with when asked. The yin to my yang and best hunting partner to exemplify the types of bonds hunters can make with each other. Now it's back to business and my turn to get on the board.
It's scratching or doing something, so then he put his head down and I let down. Didn't spook him. He swung his way around down to the path, but then just kept on going. I think he smelled my feet coming across because he kept looking this way. I tried calling, obviously, but he just ignored me and just kept on walking. So I might wait a little bit. I might see if I might start doing a rattle sequence and see if I can pull him right back. I think I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna rattle and just see what happens. It's now November 12th. That's a hurricane Nicole passed by yesterday, last night. It's not quite as wet as I thought it was gonna be. So we pulled all the yards and the cameras yesterday before I left. In the past week, 5 bucks, maybe 6, within the 3.5 to 5.5 range, including a really tall 8 and the 10-pointer. I think it's the 10-pointer. Super fun. I think I hear walking. It's gonna be really windy today. I had 8 point yesterday. It actually would have been a dead deer if I had been sitting here instead of out like Larry. We're gonna see what this morning brings us in the past week. The movement has been in the morning, ranging from like the first light all the way up to about 1 o'clock in the morning. So we're gonna see wind's coming out of the west today. We'll see what that does for deer movement, but can't fly this close to what I could fly yesterday. So let's hope that someone gives me a shot tonight or today.
So, the night right before gun season, I was fully planning on trying to film a hunt. And I remember being at work and trail cameras going off, getting towards the end of work, and it was a Friday. And there's deer in the clearing, there's smaller bucks in the clearing, there's a bunch of does in the clearing, and I'm just like, I need to go. I was hoping that by the time I drove all the way up, got dressed, got ready to go out, that the deer would have moved off away from the clearing and I can come in and sneak in there in between and then maybe catch right at last light. Saw one of the bigger bucks cruising through, because at this point the woods was on fire. It was blowing up, bucks chasing everything under the sun. And when I got there and I started to walk out, I actually bumped the does. They didn't go away from the clearing. They actually came back closer to the houses and actually were chilling right by a ground blind that my dad has set up. And I just decided right from there, I was like, I'm not going to go out into the clearing. I'm not going to push it. I'm going to sit right in this ground blind. So I took my saddle off, got in the ground blind, sat there for a bit. Didn't have my tripod with me because I was thinking I'm being up in a tree, so I wasn't able to film any of this. But after sitting there for a while, it starts to get dark. Sunset has gone and passed, and the way the new regs are, there's that half an hour after sunset you can hunt. And my phone goes off. It's my corner trail camera, which is like 20, 25 yards, 30 yards tops away from where this ground blind is. And I should be able to see whatever's in front of it, but I don't see anything. I don't see anything in the picture or anything like that. It's getting too dark actually inside the blind. I actually pull up my bow to look, and I can't see my pins. There's not enough light. So I was like, well, I still have enough light from this ground blind to be able to see where anything, if they do come into range, it's going to be super tight quarters, like 10, 15 yards, 20 yards tops. In one spot of this, but most of it's like 10 yards. But I can't see my pin, so how am I going to shoot? So I start to very quietly pack up, zip up things, and I decide what I was going to do is I was going to step outside the ground blind, no pack, just my bow and I. And I actually unknocked my arrow, put it back in my quiver just so I can easily get out of the ground blind. So as I get out of the ground blind, I actually luckily had my release in my hand so I could hold it, because I figured quickly I was going to be then pull out an arrow and knock it and kind of wait and see what kind of is going on. So as I unzipped the blind and I took a step out, I hear something. And I look over to my left and I see movement, and all of a sudden there's a deer. Deer just materializes right behind my parents' shed. And this deer's of course, in the dark, it looks way closer than it actually was. And so it looked like it was 5 to 10 yards away from me. And I was like, oh shit. And I've done this before, and I played around with deer doing this before, but the thing that came into my mind was I need to start acting like a deer. So I have no arrow knocked in my bow at all. I have my release in my hand. And the first thing I do is I'm kind of hunched over, is I see this deer, she's staring back at me. She's not super big, she's kind of small. One of the reasons why I actually got away with this. And I remember my first time actually standing up fully, I stood up and then just stomped the ground. You know how deer, when they see something, for whatever reason, I don't know why, they just want to do this little earth stomp, and they stomp the ground. So I stomped the ground, and she did it back, and then I took my hand and just did this. Just shook my hand. Kind of like and I've watched deer do this when they have their tails and they want to go do something. If they're looking at something, they're like, okay, it's fine. They'll shake their tail and go. So I started doing that. And she kind of looked at me, did the tail thing back, and we just kind of stared at each other for a bit. And then I just figured, you know what? I got an either sex tag that's good for right now. That's the muzzleloader, Archery muzzleloader, not the either sex, doe tag. It's like the antlerless tag that goes with the muzzleloader season. So I had an extra tag that I could use for any season, or any unit, any season. So I didn't have to try and have my dad sign over a DMP or anything like that. So as she's watching me at 15 yards and I'm doing this, I actually knock an arrow, and then she starts to move, and I pull back. I can't see her. I can see her outline. I see where she's starting to go, and I give her a old Mert. So she stops, and I just lined up on the outline. I knew she was well within my top pin, so that was gone. Didn't have to worry about that. And I could see the silhouette. I found her front leg, and I actually walked my pin up her front leg, past her belly, about right in between where the belly line is and her back. And I lined it up right there, and just relaxed. Went through my shot process, click, felt the arrow go, and then I heard basically the sound of when you toe kick a flat soccer ball. And then it was like, and I was like, done, got it. That's great sound, exactly what I wanted. So she kicked, she ran, I watched her run, and then I heard her drop about 40 yards away. Double long, 10 ringed, flash fading light right before the start of gun season from the ground, which I've never done before. So this is my first year I've ever killed from the ground. And while knocking an arrow in front of this deer and doing this weird little hand thingy, but it will save you in a pinch. I've done that before, so that's kind of the story of the deer that I got in November, right before the start of gun, where everything just disappears. So, but I got new meat. It was great. Yeah, crazy story. I really wish I had a camera, but at the same time, a lot of the best stories happen when there isn't a camera around. One goal I've wanted to accomplish but never had the time, space, or conditions to do so is to process my own deer. With a big cold front to hit overnight, I took the doe to Cory's and we broke her down, and I got to complete the process from field to table. If you can, do this. The ability to make the cuts in the ways you plan to consume them is an incredible feeling. Also, the knowledge of exactly where your food came from is both comforting and empowering. Cory and I would hunt the gun O opener, where we saw deer, but it had no shot opportunities. I would go out a few times, but felt conflicted. I have meat left from the deer I took in season 3, and now with this fresh meat, I had plenty of meat for the next year. I know I didn't need any more meat, and felt I was going out purely for sport, which did not sit well with me. Hunting is an exercise in discipline. Doing the right thing when no one is there to police you. Knowing when to shoot is important, but I would argue knowing when not to shoot is more important. It's easy to convince yourself you can make a shot you have no business making. It's hard to know your limits and hold yourself to them. Ethical hunters know when not to shoot and let the chase continue. Some people can live without wild things, and some cannot. A part of me is forever bonded to wild places and the wild things within them. The wilderness offers us a place of solitary freedom that we can go to get away from the noise of everyday life and find the core of who we are. Sometimes we can even go there to heal our heart and soul. This season was not about shooting a giant buck, getting a limit of ducks, or landing the fish of a lifetime. It was reminding myself of who I am, who I always will be, and reconnect to a place that has given me the ability to live. It's deeper than the thrill of the chase or the kill. It's the ability to connect with yourself that draws those of us to the outdoor lifestyle. This season is my answer to the question, why do you do it? So go out, live free, and stay true to you, no matter where the wild takes you.